I'd like to introduce my first guest, Joy Calloway. Good morning, Joy.
Good morning, Miss Brenda.
I decided to open it up and have you on because mothers are important. Let's kind of just talk about that a second.
Absolutely, and I think the connection between Mother's Day and Mental Health Month, May is also National Mental Health Awareness Month, is that because so many folks have lost their moms, this is a time of year where depression can creep in.
Absolutely, because people play it so much, and the hallmark holiday of it
Absolutely.
all makes it a big thing. Well, my parents separated when I was about 14. And my mom, she was a nurse at Ford Hospital, and she used to raise us on the phone. When I say that, like she worked days, she put a dime in the phone booth. That's how much calls were
Back then.
back in the show enough day, and she let the phone ring twice at home, and we had to call her right back.
Hmm.
And that was another way of making sure
I
we were in
remember
the
that.
house
That's right.
because there were no cell phones. And so I thought about her on her 80th birthday, and she'll be turning 96 this year. And I thought about her, and I wrote this poem about her. And all mothers can kind of get with this because no matter how our children are, we love them
To
anyway.
the
You
bone.
know it. Sometimes I remember telling my mother, I was so mad at my daughter. I told my mother, I said, I can't stand her. And she said, I stuck with you. And I
Ooh,
said, oh, God. Chatter,
that's a
chatter,
good
chatter,
one.
because I was something to stick with. I would have thrown me away. So I just want to, for Mother's Day, I just want to read this poem to you that I wrote. We were not the best of kids, but you loved us anyway. You taught us right from wrong, and though many times we did more wrong than right, you kept us anyway. You always said a hard head makes a soft behind, and though ours was hard most of the time, you kept teaching us anyway. At times, at times, food was hard to come by, and I refused milk, and Bernard didn't want liver or peas. But you fed us anyway. You sacrificed lunch at work so that we could have lunch at school. You raised us on the phone and taught us the golden rule. Yes, do unto others is a rule we try to follow each day. And even though sometimes we slipped, you loved us anyway. You are our best teacher. You taught us to stand when we longed to sit and be strong when it seemed simpler to be weak. When the doctor said I'd never walk again, you always said I would. You taught me to beat the odds and showed me that I could. Mother, you never gave up on us and taught us to make our way, and though we weren't the best of kids, you loved us anyway.
And it's
Thank you.
beautiful.
Thank you. But isn't that the truth?
Absolutely the truth. Absolutely the truth.
Every time I think about that, I get kind of a little choked up there. But and you brought up something about mental health
Sure.
and moms. And first, tell our audience what your position is and
Sure.
where, you know.
I'd be happy to. I am currently the President and Chief Executive Officer at New Center Community Mental Health Services. We are a 36-year-old this year community mental health agency. We service primarily Detroit and Highland Park. Our target market, if you will, is the severely, persistently mentally ill adult. So the
Now, can
adult
you
with
explain that to us,
Absolutely.
please?
Adult with a chronic condition of mental illness, not a short term case of anxiety or short term case of depression. These are people who are going to live their life with a chronic mental illness, bipolar disease, schizophrenia, dissociative identity disorder, or multiple personality. So these are folks that are really severely mentally ill. That's our target market. And also the seriously emotionally disturbed child. So not a child who's maybe acting out in school one day because they didn't get the phone they wanted. This is a child that is either having some organic issues in their brain or trauma related mental health issues that are serious and long term.
Okay, are there? Let's start back kind of at the beginning.
Sure.
Before you said schizophrenic,
Hmm.
there was another one you said
Probably said bipolar.
bipolar.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yes. Explain to the audience what bipolar. disorder
Bipolar, and
is.
it used to be called bipolar depression or manic depression, is a mental illness, usually organic. So there is a chemical imbalance in the brain, but sometimes caused by trauma. But it is a mental illness in which there are wide and wildly variant mood swings between manically happy and high energy, like bouncing off the wall, staying up all night and working or partying, thinking that you're Superwoman or Superman, and just really pushing the limits of the height of emotion. And at the other end of that spectrum is a severe depression, beyond just the blues, but a severe depression where suicidal ideation comes into play, really withdrawing from everything that you know and do, just
So sometimes when you see
wide variant.
people who are just up, and then sometimes these people commit suicide, and you say, but they were always up.
Because you probably, in a case of bipolar disease, you've probably only seen them in their manically excited stage.
I think of Robin Williams. I
Clinical
don't know what,
depression.
yeah,
Clinical
yeah.
depression. I don't believe his diagnosis was bipolarity, but I believe it was a clinical depression.
Because sometimes he'd be off the walls. You couldn't control him.
You know what you will notice though, and one of the ways that we try to fight stigma, the stigma against mental illness, is to talk about how many of our famous people, celebrities, people who have really contributed greatly to society, entertainers, have mental illness, because oftentimes that comedic piece that they offer, or their vocals, or being in front of that camera, they often are very different in front of that camera or behind that microphone than they are in their real life, and that is a defense mechanism against that mental illness. You think Michael Jackson, Halle Berry, Robin Williams, Jim Carrey. So those are folks that have either lived or live with a severe mental illness but have pushed through.
So if we go back to bipolar, now I've heard it called as a disorder too. So
Bipolar disorder, bipolar depression,
depression.
manic depression, number of different terms, and it is a
Okay,
spectrum.
is there a medication for this?
There are a number of different medications. I'm not a clinician, so I don't want to
Right,
throw the
right,
wrong ones
right,
out.
right.
But the treating bipolar depression, like any of the other mental illnesses, really is a very individualized approach. So there are some people who are going to respond best to medication only. There are some people who are going to respond to therapy. There are some people who are going to require both. And you really have to, if you are dealing with bipolar depression or any of the other mental illnesses, really consider spending some time with a clinical professional, and they will determine what is the best path towards your healing.
The reason why I wanted you to go into that is because there are a lot of people suffering from this, but they don't want to admit it. And in our culture, in particularly, they don't want it, people around them don't want to.
Let's talk a little bit about that. So,
Okay.
it really is based in a great thing. African Americans, we are a resilient people. We have a storied history of education and triumph and royalty. We've had a difficult road to hoe, as you would here in this country. But we do have a history of being a strong people. We talk about being a strong black woman or strong black man. We talk about older times keeping our business to ourselves and not airing our dirty laundry. It's just culturally what's important. And without putting that culture to the side, we do need to acknowledge that some of those cultural mores are causing us to die, and causing us to die early, causing us to be in states of mental illness and disease that we don't have to be. We have to learn when it's time to open our mouths and ask for help. One of the things we talk about quite a bit is, if you were, God forbid, to grab your chest and fall to the floor, I know what to do. I know who to call. I know what to do till they get here. And you would want me to come and help me, Joy, get me together, right? But if we were in a friendship relationship and I'm noticing over time that you are starting to decompensate mentally, now, because this is my field, I know what to do. I know who to call. I know how to engage you to get you down a path toward healing. But your average person is not going to say, Brenda, you seem like you're not all here. You seem like you're starting to get depressed, or you seem like you're not where you usually are. People are embarrassed to do that because, unfortunately, there is a stigma against being mentally ill or having a mental illness. You might not want people to know about it, and so you will, when you should be
You
asking
try
for
to
help,
hold it
you're trying to
together,
hold it
hold
together
it
and
together.
hide it.
Right.
because that, unfortunately, as a society, is what we're taught to do when you have this type of illness. We want mental illness to be treated just like diabetes, hypertension, chronic heart failure.
Take a pill and
No, not so much take a pill, but don't be. We don't judge people when they have diabetes.
no.
We don't judge people because they have heart failure. It's just this is what their body is doing at this point, and we're going to do what we need to help them. Why not the same for schizophrenia? This is what their brain is doing right now. There's a chemical imbalance. Let's help them.
Why do you think with our culture we're like that?
Americans are strong. Add on top of that being black Americans, strong, as we just talked about. And mental illness is seen, unfortunately, as a weakness. Some cultures and some parts of our culture is seen as something you choose. Get over it. You got the blues, get over it. Pull yourself together. And don't add the layer of church and religion on top. I'm a church girl. And I do believe that you pray and you supplicate and you go to the Lord and He will assist you. He also has gifted people with the expertise to talk me through what's going on. He's gifted people with the medical knowledge to determine what medication I might need to help me. And so he has created the path for healing through these people, yet many of us decide we're not going to go to them. We're just going to pray it away. And that's not
Right.
always the case.
Absolutely. It's not always the case and it's not always helpful.
Right.
Because you never know a person can be of danger to themselves and other people
That's
if
absolutely
they
right.
don't, especially if they don't get diagnosed.
And we see it sensationalized in the media. And unfortunately, those are the moments when we talk about it, then it fades back into black, which makes May such an important month because it gives us a reason, if we need it, when it gives us an excuse to talk about mental health and mental illness all month. And it doesn't have to be just because someone shot up a school or someone shot up the
Absolutely.
movie theater or put children in a freezer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we have bipolar, schizophrenic, and schizophrenic. Is that the one?
It's a detachment from reality. Remember, I'm the administrator, not the clinician, but a
Right.
detachment from the reality, and it shows itself in a number of different ways, and it's actually a syndrome as well. So schizophrenia, there are a lot of different things that will be happening at once to create this. The things that we're used to seeing, and when we identify someone as schizophrenic, is people that are talking to themselves or they say they're hearing voices. Those are kind of the key pieces of schizophrenia that we're accustomed to in the lay community.
I see. So what's happening this month? Are there any things,
There are a
awareness?
number of things that are happening. National Mental Health Awareness Month is something that has been recognized by some organizations for over 60 years. In 2013, President Barack Obama identified it as a national month, and he personally identified as such. Our organization, New Center, has partnered with a number of community organizations, eateries, etc., that says we will display material about mental health and mental illness. We will hand out information specifically about New Center, but general information as well. Some of those are Little Rock Baptist Church. We had Mental Health Sunday this past
Yes,
Sunday.
yes.
Talk there.
Reverend Holly.
Reverend Holly. This week, Go Smoothies downtown. The smoothie shop is a partner of ours. And what these partners are doing, sharing our information, a portion of their proceeds comes back to our organization to go into programs and services. So our goal is just to drive business there. So today's Friday. This is the last day to go and celebrate with Go Smoothies. Next week, the Addison Eatery has decided all week long.
Okay. Where's the Addison Eatery?
Addison Eatery is at 3111 Woodward Avenue. So it's right there in the midst of all the construction, but you can go back on Cass Avenue, come around the back, and still get in
Oh,
and
wow.
enjoy great
Well,
food.
we have a call on the line. Marcia, good morning.
Good morning. I'm enjoying the show, and the clinician is really telling the truth. We had mental illness in my family over 40 years ago. But however, when my brother, his was resulting from the mental illness from the war. I think they experimented with some LSD. When he came out, he was a diagnosed schizophrenic. But however, when he would go off, we would call for help, and the police would bring a psychiatrist with them, and they would come out and talk with him. Do you ever see that day happening again? Because I see so many mental ill people being murdered by the police. And I think we were so fortunate that my brother, when he would have his problems, that a police officer and a psychiatrist would come to the home. He was very highly educated, he was a professor at Wayne State, but he had a mental illness. And I would think when I see mentally ill people being murdered by police, I was really thankful that my brother had a psychiatrist and a police officer there to help him.
Well, did the
They would put
police
him in
officer?
a straitjacket, but he was helped and was taken to the hospital. So I wish they would bring that program back where they would send a police officer
Well,
and a
how,
psychiatrist to talk to the person.
Marcia, I'd like to ask, how happened? Did the police officer did know that he had mental illness? Your brother, that he was able to bring someone with him. I was trying to understand that.
Well, see, he was already in a type of program for people with mental illness. And when they would go off, and this happened here in Detroit, where they would tell him that he's going off. We would tell the police that if he was going off, he was talking out his head, this and that, making threatening gestures and throwing things. And they would bring a psychiatrist and a police officer to the house.
So there
And they would talk to him. Of course, he would act like nothing was wrong. We were crazy, and something was wrong with us. But it really did help. What was they used to take him out there to, what was it? I can't think of the mental health place.
probably
They would take
Walter
him to
Reuther,
Or
Northville.
Northville.
Northfield. They would take him to Northfield. They would take him out there. But they would send a police officer and a psychiatrist to the house.
So there are a couple
Yeah.
things that I'd like to respond to there, and I think it's important for the viewers. The first thing you said is that you believe that your brother experimented with drugs at some point. The point there is not to be judgmental, but to make sure viewers understand that mental illness most often is an organic issue in the brain. It's a chemical imbalance, and the use and abuse of drugs can impact the chemical balance in the brain. So there are some genetic predispositions to mental illness. There's also trauma-related mental illness and this change in brain chemistry because of drug use. So I thank you for bringing that point up. The other thing you said that I'd like to respond to is that I believe I heard you say that your brother had a relationship with a community health center or he was already in treatment somewhere. That definitely helps because I'm not familiar at this point with programs that pair a psychiatrist with a police officer and sent to the house. But if we know in the community mental health world, if we know that one of our consumers is having a challenge, is acting out, is in crisis, then we can make ourselves part of that process when they are in crisis and we can get out there. We at New Center are working on a mobile crisis plan right now for our consumers and other community consumers so that when there is a crisis, if we can get that call, we can get out there to the scene, much like what happened with your brother, and either work with the police to keep them from getting arrested, keep them from getting to the hospital in the first place, but to a community mental health organization that may be able to deal with that crisis in a better way, more effective, and definitely more cost efficiently.
Okay, thank you, Marcia, for your.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. And wow, so interesting because we used to have these facilities like Northville, Lafayette Clinic, Eloise. Eloise, that's way back in the
You're telling on
day.
yourself now.
Well, I used to hear about it, but I had an experience at Wayne County General that made me think that the patients from Eloise were the doctors that night. But anyway,
Wow.
that's in another world. But we had those facilities, and Governor Engler, in his wisdom, decided to cut those programs, which has led to the detriment and harm of a
Absolutely.
lot of mentally ill people.
Absolutely. And I say when people ask about this decision that was made conceptually, I believe that what Governor Engler was trying to accomplish made sense conceptually, and that was to get mentally ill people away from that kind of cold, industrialized area, those places that perhaps were not treating people the way they should, and into community-based settings. So the concept was good. My understanding is there was no plan to make it successful. So what happens
The
is you close one door.
application
That's
failed,
right. You close
failed.
one door, and you've got people just out there, not connected to community organizations in the way they should be. And so they ended up in jail and prison, on the street, in homeless shelters, not getting the help that they need. And it just has exacerbated the societal problem.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. So we were talking about the Addison Cat.
Absolutely. Next week is Mental Health Awareness Week at the Addison Eatery. And all that week during their hours of service, they will have information there about New Center, about mental health. Again, a portion of the proceeds come back to us for programs and services. So it's our time to drive people to that organization to be served. And specifically, Wednesday night, we've decided to have a Divine Nine happy hour. So those members of the nine historically black fraternities and sororities are invited to come to show their colors that night.
Divine Nine, I thought that was Delta.
That Delta's one of them, absolutely. But that is all of the nine black fraternities and sororities are considered the Divine Nine.
AKA, I have to put that out
You got to
there.
put the A, and I
Yeah.
keep the Delta on the table.
All right, we just put it out.
There you
Picking
go.
them up and laying them
So
down.
bring your sorors out Wednesday night.
And we have another call. We have Tom on the line. Good morning, Tom.
Yeah, good morning to both of you. You know what, as far as I'm concerned, former Governor John Engler was evil incarnate when it came down to mental health. Because, I mean, if you look at what he closed, I worked down at the Michigan Healthcare, right down in the mix of the Historical Museum and the Cultural Center. When I started in mental health, we had the Young Adult Institute, you had Central Cities, and it seems like New Center's been around forever. And there's North Detroit General up on Carpenter and Joseph Campo up in Hamtramck. And, you know, there were places around to service people who needed that kind of service. But, you know, when he started shutting down places, Lafayette Clinic, and things became getting further and further and further away for those who needed some inpatient service. Because even over on Martin Luther King in '96, there was the Auroras over there. You had units.
There was
for
what?
children. The Auroras complex, which was like an arm of the Michigan Healthcare Corporation. You had a day treatment program for, you know, like children and young children and right-hand lab. And there was even a unit over there that was inpatient for adults. But, it's just gotten deplorable in terms of the kind of service that's available, to folks, especially like outpatient. And thank God New Center's there, because I know there's a center down here on Wyoming and Puritan, and you got the one down on Dexter and Grand River. But there needs to be more places for people who are, like walking on the edge and about to fall over, to keep them from falling off.
Completely agree.
Agreed. Thank you so much for
Okay,
that.
Brenda.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, bye.
And that is true.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. We are going to continue to need not only community health centers, but some inpatient facilities, because
Yeah,
there are
that's what I
some
was
people that
thinking.
need to be
They
hospitalized.
should not be out on the street.
Absolutely.
And so when you
Absolutely.
see them walking around, then a lot of them need to be in
Absolutely.
a facility.
Which goes back to the mobile crisis unit that we are in the process
Tell
of
us about
developing.
that.
This is a plan, and it's a twofold plan. One of them is we really want to focus on that older teenager, that 16, 17, 18, up to about 24. That group of young people is unfortunately getting missed in this conversation about mental health. We're especially seeing it. We partner with Covenant House, an exceptional programmatic partnership, and we see a number of these young people that are homeless or otherwise estranged from their families, that have mental health needs, may or may not have finished high school. Really, just they need that additional support to get out into the workforce. But because of, I'm going to keep bringing it up, potential childhood trauma or other things in their lives that have not been aligned for success, they are struggling, and we need to put our arms around them, and they need to have a place they can call.
Not only
at
a
the time.
line, not attended to.
Absolutely.
Not attended to, because let's talk back a generation or a couple of generations, even my mom's generation. It's like if something was bothering you, or you were depressed, they said, get over it and get back into the fray.
Right.
And
Right.
sometimes it's very hard.
Absolutely.
And And that was back to that stigma. You can't be, down about that. You have to, come on now, get up.
That's right.
And I'm going to
That's
tell
right.
you something that my mom said. Someone very close to me passed away about a year and a half ago, very close. And my mom said, well, it's been 2 weeks, so now.
It's still part of our makeup. And over generations, we continue to want people to get over things. And I'm not a proponent of wallowing in something
Right,
at
right,
all,
but some.
but know when there's a point at which you need help, and we need to
Right.
stop perpetuating the idea of this strong black woman, strong black man who never needs help from anywhere. There are some things about that stereotype that are fantastic. We are resilient, we are resourceful, and those things are important. But at the same time, we are human. We hurt. We have a great deal of stress and anxiety, things that cause anxiety in our lives, and we are human. At some point, you hit that tipping point where things become too much, and we have to be okay with asking for help. It may be a family member, it may be someone in the faith community. New Center is working with faith leaders right now to understand at what point their role is exhausted and they need to pick up the phone and call a New
Thank
Center.
you. Thank you. That's very important. I think you brought up something very important because these people are not
Nope.
psychologists.
Not most of them. And there are a lot of times there's ministerial counseling degrees, etc. Those are very, very important.
Yeah.
There is a point at which more education, more expertise is necessary. And again, at the same time, if you're a pastor, you're a priest, you're the head of your faith community, you want to be seen as having the answer and being able to support your congregants, support your parishioners. So we're not blaming them. We're saying, here we are, Pastor so and so, here we are, Bishop so and so. Let's talk about what you're hearing in your community, and let us share some resources to support you in your role as a leader in the health of your congregation.
Okay, you are an administrator with it. So what are your position? What do you do?
I am responsible for the strategic direction and the operation of the business that is New Center Community Mental Health Services. And with me are psychiatrists, psychologists, nurses, therapists, and all the other staff that supports a business. My job is to make sure the business stays afloat, to make sure that people understand who we are and what we are, what we offer to the community, and to make sure that my staff is properly resourced to do their jobs to heal the community from their mental
Well, you
illnesses.
brought up the mobile center. Is it
Mobile crisis unit.
I taught high school, and I saw a lot of students who some were disturbed, but you didn't know what was going on.
Right.
See, a lot of people don't realize that a lot of things are going on in these young people's homes before they even get to school.
Absolutely.
The trauma, a lot of trauma, and in urban communities, a lot of young people have known someone to get killed.
And have not just known it, many of them have seen it in urban
Abs-
issues. And
yeah.
so our co-located programs in the high schools, we have one at Northwestern, one at Highland
Really?
Park, we're developing some others. Those programs are designed to make sure that our expertise is available to the schools, available to the teachers, the administrators. And so our program is being designed such that if there is a crisis situation in the schools with which we're partnered, they can give our school crisis team a call. We get over there, work with them to de-escalate the
That's
situation,
excellent.
and then work with the specific children that were involved to understand, is this just acting out behavior because they're crabby or hormonal that day, or is this because there was some trauma that they've dealt with that we need to address? Is this because there is some mental illness there? And we look to insert ourselves into the conversation and work with that child, his or her family, and continue to work with the school to recognize mental illness symptoms, recognize trauma-based symptoms, and know when to call us in.
Absolutely. And one experience, and this happened, it was a very unfortunate situation in the 80s where a young man was actually shot and killed within the school. This was 30 years ago. And so they took him out, everybody was crazy. They did not send you home. The principal got over the PA and said, if you want to leave, leave, but the rest of you stay here. It was nobody
chaotic.
knew exactly what to do.
Right.
So a lot of our students, school is like home for
It
a lot of
is. It
students. So they
is.
stayed, and here we were up there as teachers, and they'd still go from class to class. The bells were ringing at the regular times. And here we're trying to talk about it, and we're not equipped
Right.
to really deal with
And
it.
it's our intention to help equip schools to do that. The little things matter. There was at my alma mater, Renaissance, a few months ago now, a young man who was first missing, and then it was determined that he had committed suicide. And once they found him, the day they found him, and it was in the news, I and one of my nurses just got in our car. We went over to Renaissance High School and sat and talked to the principal. What can we do to help
Offered your
right
services.
now?
That's
And
so
that's what we
important.
have to start doing.
Okay, how can we reach out to you?
There are a couple ways. Our direct dial number is 313-961-3200. My front desk will be happy to assist you.
Repeat that number one more
Sure,
time.
313-961-3200. Whether you are interested in services, you have a question, you'd like to talk to me or my staff, you want to volunteer, you can get whatever you need done through that number. Our website is www.newcentercmhs.org www.newcentercmhs.org. You'll learn a lot about our organization there. You'll specifically see things that are happening this month for National Mental Health Awareness Month, the Addison Cafe event or Addison Eatery event, the Baker's Night of Jazz on the 21st, which we'd love to have people join us for. Another good, strong partner of ours. You should come on down. Do a little
But
poetry if you'd
yeah,
like.
I've done poetry
I
on Baker
know.
stage. I might even dance on a table.
We love that. We love that. But there are a number of different ways that you can get connected to New Center, and 2015 is our year of the champion. We're looking for
The
people,
year of the
year
champion.
of the champion, people who are willing to say, I have an interest in mental health and mental illness. I understand the connection between mental health and the overall health of the community, and we want to stand for mental health with New Center in any way necessary.
Absolutely. Well, Joy Calloway, it's great meeting you in person
Thank you.
and hearing what
Likewise.
you're saying, and it's so important